Hi, Michelle Glass here, and welcome back to another episode of our Chapter 3, Lecture 3 series. And our topic for this video are those carbohydrates. So this is the first of our 4 organic macromolecules, or we can call them biomolecules, that we'll be studying here in our Chapter 3. Now, carbohydrates are our primary source of energy for our cells, and this is going to be universally, well, I probably should not say universally. This is going to be true for most cell types, especially those that we study. The carbohydrates monomer is a simple sugar. One example of that would be glucose. And glucose then is the type of sugar that most cells like to use in order to make energy. Glucose can be stored as a polymer called glycogen. So this is going to be true for animal cells. So in our bodies and other animals, glucose is the primary source of energy. If we're eating food, then we're eating carbohydrates, which will be broken down into glucose and used by our cells for energy. If we have extra glucose, then it will be stored typically by our liver cells in the form of glycogen. So that's going to be an example of what's called a polysaccharide, and I'll have that word for you on the screen in just a few minutes. Another important job for carbohydrates is that it is a raw material to make other molecules. So we can make both lipids and proteins using our glucose molecule. So for instance, if you're a producer, you're going to be using solar energy in order to make biochemical energy. So you will, as part of the process of photosynthesis, make carbohydrates, and then you'll use those carbohydrates to then make energy in your cells, but also to make other molecules that your cells need, such as your lipids and your proteins. And we'll see that that's not just true for plants and producers, but we'll see that that's true for other cell types as well. So this is another job for carbohydrates. When we talk about carbohydrate structure, the basic structure can be described as a ratio of 1 carbon to 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen. So we see both carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen as part of the structure for carbohydrates. So we can see that here in my drawings. We can draw out our carbohydrate either in the linear form or the ring form. Typically, we'll see carbohydrates in the ring form. Remember, in my ring drawing over here, that each of those points, oops, wrong, trying to get my pointer here. Each of these points is representing a carbon that, for simplification purposes, I didn't write in. Notice we have lots of hydroxyl groups here. That's the OH minus, or excuse me, just OH group there. Because of all of those hydroxyl groups, we can describe carbohydrate molecules as hydrophilic. Hydrophilic means water-loving. So this is a reason why carbohydrates are going to dissolve in water. So they are going to be polar molecules. Okay, so I've already said that glucose is an example of a monomer for carbohydrates. It's the one that our cells really like to use in order to make energy. It's not the only monomer. So we can classify the monomer of our carbohydrates as monosaccharides. So that prefix mono, we already know, means one or single, and then saccharide is a term for sugar. So monosaccharide means a simple or a single sugar. So glucose is an example, fructose is an example. Fructose is something we like to eat. That's the thing that makes fruit sweet. So fructose is fruit sugar. If you link two monomers together, if you link 2 monosaccharides together, you get what's called a disaccharide. So disaccharide, that prefix di means 2. Saccharide is, of course, sugar. So here's an example of a disaccharide is sucrose. Now you should start to see this pattern. That OSE ending is indicative of a carbohydrate. So what that means is, if you see OSE in the name of a molecule, then you should assume it's a carbohydrate. But Not every single carbohydrate has an OSE ending. So we've got glycogen already listed. Obviously, OSE is not part of the name there, but it is still a carbohydrate. So not every single carbohydrate ends in OSE, but every molecule that ends in OSE is a carbohydrate. So it's a pattern to look for. So how then can we actually connect monomers together? How can we connect our monosaccharides together to make the disaccharide? Let's take a look. So I've sketched out for you glucose here. So 2 glucose molecules. Notice we have a hydroxyl group and a hydrogen here. We can actually pull that out in the form of water to build a new bond. So this is, of course, an example of a dehydration synthesis reaction. We've dehydrated or pulled out water, and then we've made something new. Now, when you link 2 glucose molecules together, you make a disaccharide called maltose. This is malt sugar. So if you like malted milkshakes, then you're having maltose sugar. This is also going to be found as a sweetener in beer and other alcohol, so malt sugar here. So if you are having a malt drink, then your body is going to do the opposite reaction. So I've just reversed my arrows. And now we're looking at one of those hydrolysis reactions. So when we eat maltose, then our digestive tract is going to use a water molecule, split it or lyse it to go to reconstitute our individual monosaccharide glucose molecules. So now we have glucose for our cells to use to make energy. We mentioned that glycogen is a type of polysaccharide. This is the type of polysaccharide that animals use to store glucose. So we'll see it in our bodies and we'll see it in other animal bodies. Here's our term polysaccharide. Poly prefix means many. So this literally means many sugars. The glycogen is not the only polysaccharide. Here are some other important ones listed. Now, animals use the glycogen for glucose storage. Plants use starch for glucose storage. So starch is a good source of carbohydrates for a lot of animals, including humans. So you know that you'll find this in potatoes and wheat and pasta, which is made from wheat, so breads also. Cellulose is another important polysaccharide. Plants also are using cellulose. They're using cellulose in order to form the cell walls. Now, plants have cell walls, animal cells don't. So cellulose is something that we'll see really just with plants. Now, there are some animals that have bacteria in their gut that can break down cellulose in order to use it to make energy, but humans don't have that ability. So for humans and for, other animals that are not able to digest cellulose, we use this as fiber. So this is a pretty large molecule. It's staying intact as it moves through our large intestine and helping to really clean the large intestine as it moves through the large intestine, and then of course it's coming out as part of our fecal material. And then chitin is another important polysaccharide. We'll see that this molecule is produced by insects and also crustaceans in order to help make a tough exoskeleton. And we'll see chitin also in the fungal cell walls. So we'll see that both fungi and plants have cell walls. This is one of those features that is different in between plants and animal cells, which is really our focus for this semester. We'll be comparing plant and animal cells. The last little bit for us to talk about is, of course, we've talked about sugar as being important for your body because it's something that our cells are using to make energy as well as using to make other raw materials such as lipids and proteins. But too much sugar, I think everyone knows, can be harmful to your health. So based on recommendations from the World Health Organization, you should have roughly 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. Now they're looking globally, so they're looking at what most humans are eating across the globe. Of course, some of those places food is scarce. Now, of course, in the United States, most of us don't really have this problem. In fact, most of us have too much access to food, and particularly sugar. So the FDA has come along and said, okay, well, we're going to make our recommendation to 12 teaspoons a day, which notice is twice what the World Health Organization recommends. So already it's more than what we probably need. But notice that just one 12-ounce can of soda automatically exceeds this daily recommendation. So if you are drinking a soda, then you shouldn't be having any additional added sugar in your meals during that day. So that's just something to kind of think about and be conscientious of. Having excessive amount of sugar in your diet, I think probably can lead to cavities in your teeth. And so, of course, if you are having a diet high in sugar, you want to make sure that you're doing good dental care. But it can also lead to obesity, which can then in turn lead to type 2 diabetes, which type 2 diabetes can lead to heart problems, cardiovascular disease, increase in blood pressure. So we can see that this does have some significant implications. And that's it for now.